Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Now, some may be surprised to know that this musician is actually a bit of a Harry Potter fan. I may not look the type, but it's true. I own the books, I've seen the movies at least a dozen times. I don't want to dedicate a million videos to the series, so I'm going to cover just one movie. Why am I covering Half-Blood Prince of all movies? Because to this day, this spectacular motion picture is one of the absolute worst movies I have ever seen. People have often debated which is better between the books and the movies. I will always take the sides of the books. The 4th through 8th movies have never really done the books true justice. And it always comes down to two small issues. Number 1, direction. The Harry Potter series has had this bad habit of going through movie directors like they were going out of fashion. From movies 2 through 5, they had 4 different directors, each of whom no doubt had their own vision of what each individual movie should be like. And it generally leads to pretty extreme inconsistencies and odd choices from one movie to another. An ideal example could be of how different spells look from one movie to another. Look at the stunning spell. It's red in Goblet of Fire. In every other movie, it's white. That's one big complaint of mine about the series under David Yates' direction. All the spell effects look boring. They're all white with the occasional green or blue thrown in. The movies would really have benefited from having the same director for every movie. They finally have it right for the Fantastic Beasts series, and I appreciate that. Number 2, the screenplay. This one involves condensing Goblet of Fire through Half-Blood Prince down to one movie each. The first 3 books were short enough to produce unbutchered movies. The last 4, on the other hand, those books range from 630 to 770 pages long, and they have to condense all that down to 2 hours. Inevitably, the movies suffered for it. As much as I enjoyed Goblet of Fire, it didn't exactly do the book 100% justice. Then came Order of the Phoenix, the longest book in the series, and for some reason also the shortest movie. You already know there's going to be trouble there. Nothing bad, but still watchable. Half-Blood Prince suffers the absolute worst, purely because it's the penultimate book and it's supposed to set up Deathly Hallows. It has a lot of shit to go through, and the movie covers very little of it, and it feels very unwatchable for me. It adds a lot of stupid shit that is just incredibly irrelevant and unnecessary, like that Death Eater attack on the Burrow, the absolute worst scene in the entire movie series. You'd think the entire house would be better protected against Death Eaters. Dumbledore's been slacking. I'm not going to cover the plot in great detail, I'm just going to cover my complaints. I've mentioned the screenplay sucking, but there's also just how ugly the movie looks. You look at nearly any scene, it all looks dark and murky, like there's a constant storm hovering above Hogwarts. They may have intended this as a metaphor for the dark times approaching, but honestly it's just really unappealing to look at. There's also a surprising amount of comedy in the movie. Characters do and say stupid things that just feel very irrelevant. Once again, I feel the need to bring up the inconsistent direction. We had the occasional jokesters in Fred and George in the first 5 movies, but comedy was never this noticeable. There's just a lot of stupid things in this movie that don't feel right. Like Harry trying to pick up a girl in a Muggle cafe at the beginning of the movie. Why would he do that? He just lost his godfather barely 3 weeks prior. You think trying to score chicks would be a pretty low priority at this point. Harry is just so hormonal in the entire movie, it's just so fucking cringeworthy. Between this, him fantasizing about Ginny, and being rather interested in the fact that Romilda Vane, a complete stranger to him, finds him attractive. Why would he care about this? Hell, in the book, Harry has feelings for Ginny, but he's wary about acting on it as he's worried it will compromise his friendship with Ron. And yet in the movie, he just openly says to Ron that Ginny is rather attractive.
She's smart, funny, attractive.
Attractive?
You know, she's got nice skin.
Skin? You're saying Dean's dating my sister because of her skin?
Well, no, I mean, I'm just saying it could be a contributing factor.
Was this an attempt at comedy? Was this their way of saying, oh yeah, Harry's a vulnerable teen with no parents and no close loving relatives who care about them, but nope, he still wants to get laid too. We don't need to hear this. Even Daniel Radcliffe went against this movie, calling it his worst performance. Harry Potter is supposed to be about fantasy and the occasional action. Comedy is just not needed. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one joke in the movie that is genuinely funny.
Why is it, when something happens, it is always you three?
I love that quote.
Believe me, Professor, I've been asking myself the same question for 6 years.
Then there's the things we should hear about. In the book, Harry learns about Voldemort's childhood and early life from Dumbledore over various trips into the old man's pensive. In the movie, they condense all those down to 3 very, very short scenes. Dumbledore meeting Riddle at the orphanage and Slughorn's Horcrux memory, both real and fake. We miss out on pretty crucial memories from Voldemort, like his connection to the Gaunts and how he came upon Hufflepuff's cup. This movie does a pitiful attempt to set up Deathly Hallows. Order of the Phoenix had a few issues regarding the final 2 movies as well, but Half-Blood Prince suffers tenfold. Now this movie is called Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince after all. Of course, we need to acknowledge the Half-Blood Prince himself, Severus Snape. You barely see him in this fucking movie. He has maybe 10 scenes at max, and you never see him again. Snape is one of my favourite characters in the series, and I struggle to recall how many times he appears in this movie. Slughorn takes over his post as Potions Master, and Snape teaches defence against the dark arts, but every single one of his classes are cut from the movie, so nothing there. You see him at the opening feast, you see him with the cursed necklace, he appears when McLaggen pukes on his shoes, he talks for 2 seconds to Malfoy about the unbreakable vow he made at the beginning of the movie, he appears very briefly when Harry curses Malfoy with Sectum Sempra, he is seen talking to Dumbledore on the astronomy tower, and he appears at the end. That's 15 minutes of screen time at absolute most. If I have to credit one thing, I think his appearance at Slughorn's Christmas party is one of the best scenes in the movie.
You've just bought yourself a month's detention, McLaggen. Not so quick, Potter.
But still, 15 minutes! He's in the fucking movie title. You'd think he'd be a bit more, you know, important to the plot. And the absolute worst travesty regarding Snape in this movie? Snape's nickname, that's part of the movie title, is barely acknowledged.
You dare use my own spells against me, Potter? Yes. I'm the Half-Blood Prince.
And that's it. That one quote. It's never brought up again. Harry never questions it. Hermione doesn't mention Snape's parents being Eileen Prince and Tobias Snape. Very little reference to Snape creating Sectum Sempra is made. Nothing is ever said about it ever again in the entire series. Snape just says that line and then walks away into the night. This movie barely qualifies to be called Half-Blood Prince with that less than half-assed attempt to make a title connection. They spend the entire movie questioning who is the Half-Blood Prince, who owns this potions book. Snape says the line at the end, and then no one ever mentions it or questions a single thing again. This movie is a massive fucking train wreck in nearly every way conceivable. It is an absolute nightmare to watch. When it comes to popular movie franchises, I used to question which was worse, Fast and Furious, Tokyo Drift, or Half-Blood Prince. It took me a while, but I've come to the conclusion that Half-Blood Prince is the worst of the two. Tokyo Drift is the only Fast and Furious movie I actually dislike, and it's one of the most boring movies I've ever seen. But it adds virtually nothing to the overall plot, so I can happily skip it and move on to the 7th movie without missing anything important. With Half-Blood Prince, as terrible as the movie is, it actually has somewhat important plot elements crucial to Deathly Hallows, so if I'm in the mood to binge watch the entire movie series, I more or less have to watch Half-Blood Prince to get the complete experience. Philosopher's Stone through Order of the Phoenix I can watch, but I just fucking loathe watching Half-Blood Prince. But this is video memories after all. We need a story. Gladly, I have a story. The first time I saw this in theatres, there was a constantly chatting group of women behind me. They would just not shut the hell up throughout the entire movie. Until they heard 2 rather iconic words.
Avada Kedavra.
And that's it. absolute silence to the end, as if they had never read the book. There's one thing I have to compliment about the movie. It's bullshit how unprotected Hogwarts is during this scene, and I hate how they didn't bother to include the funeral, but I actually like how Dumbledore's death is portrayed. It is a genuinely good scene. Sure, the killing curse looks blue, but since in reality it's a mercy kill, I like to think it works. I actually enjoy that scene to this very day. Sure, it goes back to shit once Snape mentions his alias, but it was a genuinely good 2 minutes there. And that's it. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince is still one of the absolute worst movies I have ever seen, and I despise its very existence. In case some people may ask, I have several answers on what is the best Harry Potter movie. For book faithfulness, I point to Philosopher's Stone. For special effects, Goblet of Fire. For pure action, Deathly Hallows Part 2. Now to never talk about Half-Blood Prince again. Let's go back to what I love.